They never tell you this, but maturity in a woman doesn't always crave strength. Sometimes, it hungers for softness, not emotional strength, not wisdom, not power, but that fragile, intoxicating innocence that only a naive man can still possess. It's not the kind of hunger people admit. It's not romantic, and it's not noble. It's a hunger rooted in nostalgia, the craving to feel young again by standing beside someone who hasn't yet been broken by life. Mature women know the game. They've seen love, betrayal, disappointment, and survival. But when they meet a man who still believes, in loyalty, in purity, in fairness, they feel something ancient stir inside them. Not attraction. Not lust. Power. The quiet, invisible thrill of being the one who knows. Because knowledge is both a blessing and a curse. And those who've lived long enough to see the truth sometimes long for the days when they didn't. Part 1, extended to 800 words, full. There's a strange beauty in naivety. It glows in the eyes, softens the voice, and makes the soul visible. You can see it in the way a naive man looks at a woman he admires, with that unfiltered faith that she's good, that she's special, that she means what she says. And for a woman who's lived through betrayal, that kind of gaze feels like sunlight after years of shadows. A mature woman doesn't meet a naive man and think, he's my equal. No. Deep down, something older whispers, he's my echo. He reminds me of who I used to be. But there's a darker side to that connection. When someone has seen enough of life, purity becomes both precious and disposable. It's like watching a delicate glass in your hand. You marvel at its clarity, but a part of you wonders what it would sound like if it shattered. Mature women, especially those who've been disappointed or controlled, often crave the emotional space that naive men naturally give. He doesn't question. He listens. He believes. To her, that innocence feels like oxygen. But it's not always affection that draws her in, it's the intoxicating sense of being needed again. In her mind, she thinks she's guiding him, teaching him, showing him the world. But underneath, there's another truth. She's feeding on his belief. His admiration becomes a mirror that reflects back her fading light. His youth becomes her second chance at feeling alive, even if it's temporary. And she knows it's temporary. She knows that once his eyes open, once he learns to see the shadows she's learned to live with, he'll look at her differently. The illusion will break. The boy will see the woman not as a goddess, but as a person. And for her, that's when the magic dies. This is the hidden reason, the reason few admit. Mature women don't always want naive men for love. They want them to feel young again, to feel clean again, to feel like the world is still soft and forgiving. But the irony is, every time they do, they kill a little of that innocence in the process. Because you can't touch purity without leaving fingerprints. It's a cycle older than romance. The experienced seek the unexperienced not out of lust, but out of emotional vampirism, feeding on the untouched energy of someone who still believes that love is simple. She'll tell him stories of her past, but she'll edit the darkness. She'll smile when he says she's different, and maybe she'll even start to believe it. She'll let him think he's healing her, when in reality, she's drawing from him, absorbing his optimism, his idealism, his unbroken faith in connection. And the more he gives, the more she feels alive. But the more she feels alive, the more he begins to fade. It's not intentional cruelty. It's survival. When life has taken too much from someone, they start to live by instinct, to reach for anything that gives them warmth, even if it means stealing it from another soul. So when a mature woman meets a naive man, the attraction isn't about age. It's about polarity. It's about light and shadow. He represents everything she's lost: trust, wonder, simplicity. She represents everything he's yet to learn: complexity, pain, depth. And the two collide like a flame meeting air, bright, brief, and devastating. What begins as admiration quickly becomes dependency. He wants her approval, she wants his adoration. He's trying to become what she deserves, while she's trying to stay what he believes she is. Both are trapped in an illusion built on unmet needs. And when the illusion breaks, both bleed. But in that brief moment, before the disillusionment, before the reality sets in, there's a raw kind of beauty. The kind that can't be faked. The kind that makes you forget the world is cruel. Because when she looks at him, she sees her youth reflected. When he looks at her, he sees his future embodied. Both are wrong. But both are desperately human. And that's why this truth stays hidden. Because to admit it would mean confessing that love, for many, isn't about companionship, it's about emotional theft. About taking from another what the world has already taken from you. Let's strip away the poetry for a moment and face the truth. Mature women who seek naive men are not chasing youth, they're chasing control disguised as tenderness. Because innocence is influence. Naivety makes a man pliable, open, suggestible. He doesn't resist her interpretations, her version of reality. He absorbs them. He becomes her creation, the man she wishes existed in the men of her past. And for a woman who's spent years being misunderstood, abandoned, or betrayed, molding someone into understanding her feels like redemption. But redemption built on illusion is still a form of manipulation. Let's call it what it is: psychological restoration through control. A mature woman, after years of emotional instability, becomes addicted to being the teacher, the healer. It makes her feel useful, relevant, powerful. She plays the role of the enlightened one, the one who shows him the world. But underneath the gentle surface, her real motive isn't guidance, it's to reclaim power in the one place she lost it most: love. Because love, in her past, was chaos. And chaos leaves a scar that doesn't fade. You see, when someone has loved and lost, they rarely seek love again, they seek safety. And nothing feels safer than someone who's too naive to hurt you, too inexperienced to challenge your authority, too pure to deceive. That's why she doesn't want a seasoned man. She doesn't want to argue, to compete, to be seen in her raw, flawed reality. She wants a mirror that reflects her best side, endlessly, unquestioningly. A naive man gives her that. He listens with awe. He forgives easily. He doesn't see the warning signs, the quiet condescension, the subtle manipulation, the moments she tests his devotion just to see if he'll stay. He interprets it as passion, intensity, emotional depth. But what he's really seeing is a woman testing how much power she has left. And she needs that power. Because for many women who've lived through rejection, empowerment often becomes entangled with control. She tells herself she's teaching him what women want, but in reality, she's teaching him how to orbit her, how to think, feel, and love in a way that feeds her wounds. That's the paradox. She needs his purity, but she can't stand his ignorance. She needs his devotion, but she'll punish him for his weakness. She'll encourage his emotional openness, then mock it when it threatens her authority. And she won't understand why she does it. Because it's not conscious. It's psychological compensation, the soul's attempt to rewrite history by taking a softer version of the same story. Every time a mature woman chooses a naive man, she's replaying an archetype: the teacher and the student, the nurturer and the innocent. It's not about love, it's about balance. The older ego restores itself by feeding on admiration. The younger ego grows by attaching to wisdom. Both think they're healing, but they're only reenacting trauma in disguise. She becomes addicted to his fascination. He becomes addicted to her approval. And slowly, they begin to shape each other into caricatures of their needs. She becomes the goddess, he becomes the worshipper. She teaches, he listens. She doubts, he reassures. She pulls away, he chases. Until one day, he stops chasing. That's when it all collapses. Because the moment he begins to see her clearly, when he no longer reacts with blind devotion but with calm awareness, the dynamic disintegrates. She feels unseen, unloved, unneeded. He feels manipulated, drained, deceived. What was once emotional chemistry turns into psychological warfare, subtle, polite, but deadly. She'll tell herself he changed. He'll tell himself she used him. But the truth is, both used each other. He used her as a symbol of maturity, of emotional safety, of womanhood that would finally accept him. She used him as a vessel to relive her lost youth, to reassert her value, to heal her ego through control. And when it ends quietly. No shouting, no drama, just silence. The kind of silence that follows when two people realize they never actually met, only projected. The naive man will walk away a little older, a little colder, a little wiser. He'll tell himself he'll never be so trusting again. And the mature woman will walk away emptier. Because what she fed on, his innocence, his belief, is gone now. And she'll miss it. She'll scroll through her messages, look at the photos, and remember the way he looked at her, like she was pure. Like she was safe. Like she was the answer. But she knows she wasn't. She was just the next lesson life had prepared for him. And he, unknowingly, was the mirror that showed her how far she'd drifted from who she used to be. That's the hidden reason mature women want naive men. Not for love, not for lust, but for reflection. They want to stand before someone untouched and see who they were before life hardened them. And for a brief moment, that reflection feels like home. But all illusions fade. And when they do, what's left isn't love, it's awareness. The painful, sobering awareness that sometimes, the only way we feel alive is by borrowing the innocence of someone who hasn't yet been destroyed by life. Let me tell you a story. A man once told me about the first older woman he ever fell for. He was 26, all heart, no armor. She was 41, elegant, self-assured, the kind of woman who didn't ask for attention but owned it the moment she entered a room. He said she looked at him differently than women his age ever did. She didn't see him as a boy. She saw potential, a kind of soft power, a mind that could still be shaped. She called him old soul the first night they met, and he believed her. He told me she made him feel like he mattered, like his innocence wasn't weakness, but something sacred. She taught him about art, food, silence. But beneath all of that beauty was a slow transformation. He started changing without noticing. He stopped talking about his dreams because she'd always smile in that knowing way, the kind that said, "You'll understand one day." He stopped questioning her decisions. He stopped seeing her flaws. He said loving her felt like entering a cathedral, quiet, holy, intimidating. And he worshipped. Not because she asked him to, but because he didn't know any other way to love. And that's the danger of innocence. It doesn't recognize imbalance until it's already drowning in it. Months passed. Her compliments turned into corrections. Her affection became conditional. If he agreed with her, she adored him. If he didn't, she withdrew, not with anger, but with disappointment. That's worse. Disappointment from someone you idolize feels like moral failure. He tried harder. He became what she needed, attentive, patient, deferential. And the more he gave, the less she respected him. You see, that's the paradox of control. Once you can fully shape someone, they cease to be interesting. And once he became hers entirely, she lost the spark that drew her to him in the first place. He thought he did something wrong. She said she just needed space. She didn't leave because he failed her. She left because he stopped being her mirror. He no longer reflected her youth, her mystery, her relevance. He became too aware, too balanced, too knowing. And for her, that was the end. She told him he'd grown, and in a cruel way, she was right. Because growth was never her intention, it was the side effect of his pain. There's another story. A woman in her late 30s told me about a younger man she once dated. She said he made her feel alive, like she was 20 again. He'd send her long messages about his dreams, his philosophies, his plans for the future. She said, "He looked at me like I was the universe." But the more she basked in that light, the guiltier she felt. Because she knew she wasn't that universe. She knew she was just borrowing his awe to fill her emptiness. She told me, "It wasn't him I loved. It was how he made me feel about me." That's the truth most won't admit. Mature women don't always fall for naive men because of who they are, but because of what they reflect. They make her feel seen again, wanted again, chosen again. And when that illusion fades, the heartbreak isn't about losing the man, it's about losing the version of herself that existed through his eyes. I remember watching another couple at a cafe once. She was in her 40s, effortlessly elegant. He was maybe 28, with that restless curiosity that younger men carry like a torch. He talked about books, art, ambition. She watched him, smiling, saying little. But there was something in her gaze, admiration laced with melancholy. When he excused himself to take a call, her face changed. The smile dropped. For a moment, she looked tired. Not old. Just aware. Aware that what she was experiencing wasn't love, but escape. He came back, full of energy, and her mask returned, soft, radiant, maternal almost. That's when I realized something. Mature women often love naive men like mothers love their sons, with pride, tenderness, and a quiet ache. Because deep down, they know it won't last. She knows she's the lesson. He's the learner. She knows one day he'll walk away, and everything she awakened in him will be used on someone else. And still, she gives. Still, she plays the role. Because for that brief period, she gets to feel alive again. Psychology calls it the restoration dynamic. It's not evil, it's human. When someone's identity has been fractured by pain, they seek reflection through others to rebuild it. Mature women who've been broken by men seek naive men not to harm them, but to unconsciously repair the part of themselves that still believes love can be pure. But innocence and experience cannot coexist for long. One always devours the other. So it becomes a quiet tragedy, two people clinging to each other, one trying to remember who she was before the world hardened her, the other trying to become someone the world might finally take seriously. She teaches him to see darkness. He teaches her to see light. But neither realizes that in doing so, they're erasing each other. By the time the naive man wakes up, he's not the same. His optimism has been stained with realism. His open heart has learned boundaries. His devotion has learned suspicion. And she's left holding the silence he once filled. She scrolls through old messages, through pictures of his laughter, remembering how it felt when someone still believed she was untouched by cynicism. She knows she won't find that again. Not in another man, not in herself. Because innocence isn't something you can borrow twice. That's why these relationships burn bright and die fast. They were never meant to last. They were meant to remind her of who she used to be. Remind him of what he must lose to grow. And once the lesson is complete, love disappears like smoke after a fire, leaving behind only the scent of something beautiful that couldn't survive reality. In the quiet aftermath, when the dust of passion has settled and the masks have fallen, both stand alone, two souls staring at the debris of what they called love. There's no villain left, no hero either. Just truth. And truth, once seen, doesn't let you go back to sleep. He sits with his thoughts, realizing that love isn't always something that happens between equals. Sometimes it's an exchange, not of affection, but of energy. Innocence traded for validation. Hope traded for control. And she sits in her silence, realizing that control doesn't heal the wounds it hides. Power can make you feel desired, but it can never make you feel whole. There's something tragic in how humans try to escape loneliness, how we use each other as antidotes for what time has taken away. The woman seeks the man's innocence like oxygen, and the man seeks her depth like meaning. Each one believes they're finding love, but what they're really doing is reaching for their missing halves. He wants to be seen. She wants to be believed. But belief fades. Vision clears. And when clarity arrives, so does the end. Still, there's no shame in it. To crave innocence is human. To lose it is inevitable. The world demands that you wake up, and waking up always hurts. The naive man learns that kindness without discernment invites destruction. The mature woman learns that wisdom without humility turns to manipulation. Both carry their lessons like scars, invisible, but permanent. And maybe that's how it's supposed to be. Because every connection, no matter how doomed, teaches us something sacred about who we are when stripped of illusion. For him, it's the death of blind trust. For her, it's the death of borrowed youth. Both deaths necessary for rebirth. You can't truly understand love until you've seen how easily it becomes control. You can't recognize purity until you've watched yourself destroy it. You can't value truth until you've lied to yourself long enough to know why you did it. So they move on. She with quieter eyes, he with heavier ones. She still searches for the gaze that once made her feel alive. He still guards himself against the tenderness that once made him weak. But every now and then, in some distant corner of their lives, they'll remember each other. Not with bitterness. Not even with regret. But with the strange tenderness that only comes from having shared something raw and real, even if it wasn't right. Because what they had wasn't fake. It was just human, messy, asymmetrical, doomed from the start, but born from the same ancient need that drives us all. The desire to be understood without having to explain. And maybe that's what all love is, in the end. Not salvation. Not forever. Just the brief moment when two broken timelines cross and recognize themselves in each other's eyes. She'll always represent the moment he lost his innocence. He'll always represent the moment she almost found hers again. And that's the quiet poetry of it. Two souls meeting not to save each other, but to finish a lesson the universe wrote long before they met. So when people ask why mature women want naive men, the answer isn't cruel. It's profoundly sad. They don't want to hurt them, they want to feel something they've lost. But every time they try, they watch it slip away again, because innocence cannot survive under the weight of awareness. It dies the moment it's touched. But in that death, both are reborn. One into wisdom, the other into truth. And perhaps that's what the human heart was designed for, to be broken just enough to finally see itself clearly. So if you've ever loved someone who used your light to find their way, forgive them. They didn't mean to steal it, they just didn't know how to live without it. And if you've ever used someone's innocence to remember who you were, forgive yourself too. Because pain doesn't make you cruel, it just makes you forget how to be gentle. In the end, love is never wasted. Even the love that destroys us is teaching us how to see. And maybe, that's the real hidden reason mature women want naive men. Not to own them, not to use them, but to remember what it felt like to be unbroken, even if only for a moment.